Welcome to your Sunday NFL betting preview. I'm Joe Duffy of OffshoreInsiders.com. We're going to have some betting news and notes on this report. Plus, we will have a free pick, and we'd like to welcome a brand new sponsor, BetNow.eu. The initial deposit is going to be matched by 100% with Bitcoin. Just mention the 100% sign-up bonus. Now let's get straight to your Sunday preview, and as I said, we've got a free pick coming up. The Bears and the Eagles. Philadelphia has a league best 8-2 against the spread margin. Also, a league best 9.7 margin of cover. Some people call it the ATS margin, and I know other forms of media back when ESPN Chalk was much more active, they used to like to call it the sweat barometer, but it is how much a team covers the spread by or doesn't cover the spread by. We'll talk about some of the worst teams against the spread in just one moment. So it's similar to the points per game margin, just relative to the spread. Now, is this a sandwich game for Philadelphia? It's, of course, in between road games at their hated rival, the Dallas Cowboys. Possible letdown situation, not to mention they're playing at Seattle, which begins a 3-game road trip. Now, when a team has at least 6 more wins than their opponent and laying at least 4.5 points, actually 88 and 66 against the spread, so that would benefit Philadelphia. Somewhat surprising in that most of our angles are regression to the mean angles. Jaguars and the Cardinals. The Jaguars have the second best against the spread margin in the NFL at plus 9.4. They've covered 6 of their 10 games this year. The Cardinals have the second worst against the spread margin in the entire NFL at minus 7.2, and they are 2-7-1. But when you have an underdog with at least a 15.4 against the spread margin disadvantage or deficit for the season, they're actually a pretty good bet at 200, 159 and 10, and that would favor the Cardinals. Now, keep in mind, one of the reasons that the Cardinals have been such a disappointment this year, star running back David Johnson and Carson Palmer, likely out for the season. Some might say that will play a little bit of a psychological effect, knowing that Arizona, they can't necessarily backdoor into the playoffs and then have a heroic return from possibly their 2 most valuable offensive players. The Bills and the Chiefs. Again, from OffshoreInsiders.com, the place to go for the best sports betting picks. Big favorites in non-divisional games and a quality rushing team go under at a 30-4 rate since 2014. But admittedly, it's only 4-4 recently. That's why at press time, we have this, as a check mark, as a possible premium play on the under. But because most of our premium plays, we like to have it go back at least 10, a dozen years. And most of our top angles that we do bet on go back the entire history of our database since 1988. And as we said, it's not going in reverse, so to speak, but it is only 4-4 recently. But that would favor this game under the total. Now, the Dolphins against the Patriots. Since week 6, the Patriots defense is second in the NFL in points allowed, allowing a mere 12.5 points per game, and Jacksonville, which is having a historic year, is actually number 1. So that's pretty impressive. But teams that allow 12.4 or fewer points per game over the last 4 games, but yet still greater or equal to 20 for the season, have gone over at a 24-16 rate. Again, not statistically overwhelming, but it's one of those things we wanted to check when a team that's generally been so defensively, but they are trending on the positive end. It's not necessarily a case where it is going to go under historically. In fact, it's a half-decent overplay. Sunday, by the way, interdivision game of the year plus the away favorite game of the year among 3 wise guys. 2 major plays. Joe Duffy's picks, the industry standard at OffshoreInsiders.com. By the way, as we file this report, 145-90 with all football picks since preseason at OffshoreInsiders.com. The Browns and the Bengals. Endless regression of the mean angles that do say to go with the Browns, including going with horrific road teams off consecutive blowout losses, 73.8%. Essentially, as we've said many times, the NFL is the ultimate regression to the mean sport. You actually win ugly in the NFL. You usually go against great and or hot teams and go with bad and or cold teams. And so many of our top angles that go back the entire history of our database favor Cleveland here. The problem is, and it's why it's probably not going to be a premium play, the big exception and the outlier to most of our regression to the mean angles are teams that have lost at least 21 out of 22 over multiple seasons are a go against at 23-7. So the computer essentially says Cleveland is so historically bad that they are the exception to the rule, going with bad teams. Now, the Bengals are generally predictably unpredictable. Look, when laying 7 or more under Marvin Lewis, who is, I don't know how this guy keeps his job. Just 12-17, the Bengals are under Marvin Lewis when laying 7 or more, including 0-3 off of a win as an underdog. So again, these predictably unpredictable teams and quarterbacks, what do we like to tell you? They're good to go against as a big favorite, good to go with as a big underdog, good to go against when they're coming off an impressive effort and they're playing well, good to go with when they look like crap in their last game. So the predictably unpredictable angle, and it's verified that Cincinnati has been this way under Marvin Lewis, would say to go with Cleveland. Now, Cleveland is going to go with Deshaun Kaiser at quarterback. He does get the start. He's got the biggest upside of any of the 3 awful quarterbacks, but he's, the one who is capable of really coming up with a heck of an effort. Bengals defense was on the field for 76 plays last game. Teams that are laying 8 and more off of a win in which the defense was on the field for 76 or more plays, only 20-31 against the spread, so that would favor Cleveland. Now, generally with so much uncertainty, as we said, a big underdog is usually a good play. Also, we have a sandwich situation that says to fade the Bengals. It's 31-15. Again, they're coming off a win as an underdog, and they play at Pittsburgh next week. And Cincinnati is, in theory, in the playoff race, but one of the biggest myths in sports betting, it crosses every sport, is to go with the team that quote-unquote needs it more. Look, the fact is, if Cincinnati was very good at winning big games, they wouldn't be in a must-win situation. So the free pick here is to go with Cleveland. I can tell you it's not one of my premium picks. We are at least looking into it as a premium pick at Joe Duffy's picks at offshoreinsiders.com. Don't have them completed as we file this report, but because we do find out that the outlier really does apply to fading Cleveland here, it's a free pick, may or may not be a premium pick. Only one game this weekend that has 2 winning teams. It's the Saints and the Rams. Rams and the Saints have the 3rd and 4th best against the spread teams based on their against the spread margin. 2 of the best teams in the NFL, Rams at plus 9.2, the Saints at plus 8.1. Now, when 2 great against the spread teams play, that means they meet and they have a combined 17.3 points per game margin or better against the spread. It does go over at a pretty decent rate at 102-79 if it's game 4 or later. That's 66.2%. So basically 2 good teams, and when they've played enough games to essentially corroborate that the record says they're good teams, do go over at a fairly high rate. The Broncos and the Raiders, Denver has the worst against the spread margin in the NFL at -8, and they're 2-7 against the spread. One of these angles that we got from the Fox sheets, medium range total, 2 middling offenses, does go over at a 97-67 rate. That would apply here. Now, it's interesting. The Raiders fired their defense coordinator, Ken Norton Jr. Several players really expressed their displeasure. So, how will those defensive players respond? Broncos, meanwhile, fired offensive coordinator Mike McCoy. Sometimes, especially on offense, change for the sake of change works short-term. So, the theory there would say that Denver would get that boost. Now, the Raiders' defense, would they also get the same boost? Well, again, a couple players missed practice for, non-injury related reasons. The tail wagging the dog here. So, you could probably argue that, Oakland's firing, maybe they'll respond positively. Denver, it's really tough to say. Top consensus plays for the week, and these are public consensus. I've got offshore, Las Vegas, and big-time outlaw sources. Jacksonville, Carolina, and Philly. But, quite frankly, it is following the usual pattern there. You got 2 road favorites and then, of course, a big home chalk. You do know that the public really enjoys betting those big favorites. And when a team is a road favorite, that almost by definition is a big favorite. So really, frankly, nothing out of the ordinary betting patterns as far as that's concerned. Again, welcome betnow.eu to our family of sportsbooks that do sponsor the offshoreinsiders.com videos. And for the top picks in the handicapping world, tracing our roots back to the score phone days of the 1980s, Visit offshoreinsiders.com.